friends, welcome back to Red Ice Creations Radio. This is Henrik Palmgren coming to you from the west coast of Sverige, and this is our own internet talk radio program available through our website redicecreations.com every Thursday and Sunday. I'm glad that you're here and tune in because we're in for a treat. We have a very interesting topic and a very interesting guest lined up today. Author, researcher and lecturer Dr. Michael A. Cremo is with us. He is a member of the History of Science Society, the World Archeological Congress and the European Association of Archaeologists, and he's a world-renowned expert in archaeological evidence for extreme human antiquity and alternative theories of human origins. And of course he is the author of Forbidden Archeology, the Hidden History of the Human Race. He's also behind Human Devolution, a Vedic alternative to Darwin's theory, and also the condensed edition of Forbidden Archeology entitled The Hidden History of the Human Race. And I'm looking forward very much talking with Michael about his work, research, books and findings today. Michael's website that you should take a look at right away is mcremo.com. So you can follow along during our show here today, and from there you can also find links to forbiddenarchaeology.com and humandevolution.com. And there's lots to talk about, a lot of interesting stuff to bring up here during today's show, so I think we should get to it right away, as it were. Welcome to the program, Mr. Cremo, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, I'm very happy to be with Red Ice and all your listeners.
Excellent. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you again for coming on. You know, this is a fascinating topic, findings and evidence that doesn't fit into the standard model of what has been laid before us as the truth about our past origins and where we come from and you know how long we've been here. Basically, I hope to get into this today with Michael, of course, and talk about what the might have been going on this planet, and perhaps to unravel or at least question some of the things that we think we know about our past. And Michael, to get into the topic, I'd love to hear a little bit about how your research on this topic first began and how your book Forbidden Archaeology came about.
Well, it really begins in Sweden. Yeah, because when I was 16 years old, I was in Sweden. I was hitchhiking through the country, and I came to Stockholm. And when I was in the youth hostel in Stockholm, I met some other young people who had traveled overland to India and back. And the stories they told me about India were very, very fascinating. So I made a note to myself, I have to go to India someday. I want to do that as well. So that didn't happen for a good number of years, but I became interested in Indian philosophy. I became the student of a guru from India named Bhaktivedanta Swami, who was one of the gurus of George Harrison of the Beatles, for example. Yeah. But through his teachings, I became interested in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India. And among those writings is a group called the Puranas. And the word Purana means history. And in these ancient Sanskrit histories, I read accounts of human civilizations that have existed on this planet for many, many millions of years. Actually, according to the Puranas, humans have existed since the very beginning of the history of life on Earth. That was completely different from anything I had ever heard from my teachers at university and school. So I thought, if there's any truth to what these ancient writings say, there should be some physical evidence to support it. But when I looked in the current textbooks of archaeology and anthropology, I didn't find any such evidence. In the textbooks, I only found evidence that supported the current theory that humans like us came into existence only about 100,000 or 200,000 years ago, having evolved from more primitive ape-like ancestors. But I decided not to stop there. I decided to go deeper than the textbooks. I began to look at the original archaeological reports from scientists from all parts of the world. Somehow or other, I have a reading knowledge of most of the European languages, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Russian, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I began looking at original archaeological reports from the time of Darwin up to the present. And when I did that, I was very amazed to find that archaeologists from all parts of the world have discovered evidence for extreme human antiquity. And this evidence takes the form of human skeletal remains, human artifacts, and human footprints that go back many, many millions of years. So that's how I got started on the research. And as I said, the story started in Sweden, really.
That's interesting, yeah. Very interesting. So that's quite an interesting, turn of events in a way, I guess, to actually go out in that sense and searching for something. In a way, I guess that is how the traditional archaeological world works too, isn't it? Kind of you lay forward a theory, as it were, and then you go out and try to actually find the evidence for your theory.
Well, that's how it works in the ideal sense, that archaeologists go and look and they find some evidence and they report it and then it's accepted. But sometimes it really doesn't work like that. For example, there's the case of Virginia Steen McIntyre, who's an American scientist I know. She's a geologist, and she was involved in dating an archaeological site in Mexico. The place is called Huayatlaco, near the town of Puebla in central Mexico. And during the 1970s, some American archaeologists were there, and they were making excavations, and they found human artifacts. So they wanted to know how old they were, so they brought a team of geologists to date the site. So Virginia Steen McIntyre and her colleagues used 4 methods to date the site. They got an age of about 300,000 years, but the archaeologists refused to accept it. They said, that's impossible. Human beings capable of making these artifacts did not exist anywhere in the world 300,000 years ago. They had not evolved yet. So the archaeologists refused to publish the age for the site given by their own hand-picked team of geologists. Now, Virginia Steen McIntyre, she decided to independently publish the age for the site that she and her colleagues had gotten using their scientific methods. When she did that, she found she lost a teaching position that she held at a university in the United States, and she also found all of her opportunities for professional advancement were suddenly blocked because she had dared report something that contradicted the dominant theory of human origins. So it's as you say, in an ideal sense, how science should work is, yes, some scientists, they should have an idea, they should go out, they should do research. If they find facts that support their research, then that should result in some change of the theories. But it doesn't always work that way.
So it wasn't like you stumbled upon these these findings, as it were, because this was a conscious decision, so to speak, to set out and to find some of these things that supported the theory that you had. By the way, do you kind of do any digging, as it were, yourself, or do you go to literature to find your support here?
Mostly, Henrik, I'm dealing with the literature. I'm doing an archaeology of archaeology, you could say. I'm looking at what archaeologists report they have found, but which you won't find mentioned in the textbooks. So that was very amazing to me when I started doing this research, because I was not going out myself and digging into the ground to find artifacts. I was looking at the reports of archaeologists and other earth scientists who have done that. And I was very amazed to see that many of them had reported finding evidence for extreme human antiquity. And then I had to ask, well, if there's so many reports like this by scientists, why aren't they mentioned in the current textbooks of archaeology? And the reason is what I call a process of knowledge filtration that operates in the world of science. If you have reports of evidence that go along with the dominant theories, that evidence passes through this intellectual filter very easily, which means students will read about this evidence in their textbooks. People will see scientists talking about it on television, and if they go to the local museum, they will see this evidence on display.
Yeah.
But if we have evidence that radically contradicts the dominant theories, that evidence does not pass through this intellectual filter very easily, which means we're not going to hear very much about it. And that's why I called my book Forbidden Archaeology.
Yeah.
Because if you imagine archaeology to be like a big museum, you would find that ordinary people are only let into one small room of that museum, where you will see the stones and the bones, the discoveries that support the dominant theory, which is now the Darwinian theory of evolution.
Yeah.
But what most people don't realize is that there are other rooms to that museum of archaeology, rooms with what we might call locks on the doors. So what I've tried to do in my work is take the locks off the doors and let people see what else is in that museum, big museum of archaeology. And what we find are many discoveries showing that humans have existed for vast periods of time on this planet.
So, you're talking about the knowledge filter, and this, of course, is a big area, to talk about perhaps a little bit later on, the suppression and why this is taking place and so forth. But one thing that comes up right away, I think, is have you come across any group of interest group or even museum or collectors that are aware of your findings and themselves actually are collecting this material?
Yes, I do meet such people in different parts of the world, scientists in different parts of the world, and in many cases they are the ones who have been the victims of this knowledge filtering process. Virginia Steen McIntyre, for example, I know personally. She was involved in dating this site in Mexico, and because she gave it an age that was too old, for most scientists to accept, she suffered from it professionally.
Yeah.
But I've met other scientists who have been involved in such discoveries, and they're very happy that I'm bringing some of these things to light.
Yeah.
So yes, there are scientists, there are students of archaeology who are very interested in what I'm doing. A graduate student of archaeology from a university in the United States wrote a letter to me. He told me he was out on an excavation with his professor, and he just happened to mention to his professor, perhaps human beings are older than we now think possible. And he wrote to me that his professor said to him, I have a book that you should read. So his professor gave him a copy of my book, Forbidden Archaeology. And I thought that was very interesting.
Indeed.
That this professor had been secretly reading my book, and when he met a student that seemed a little bit open-minded about the possibility of extreme human antiquity,